ready?
Yes, yeah, we're good.
My name is Madeline Shepperson, and I am doing an interview for the Kernersville Museum Foundation with IveyRedmon at 202 Westwood Drive in Kernersville, North Carolina. Good morning, Ivey.
Good morning, Madeline.
First, I'd like you to tell me how old you are.
93 in January the 30th.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And were you born right here in Kernersville?
I was born in Walnut Cove
Okay,
and moved to Walkertown, and I was educated at Walkertown High School.
okay.
And then I went to the Signal Corps School in Winston, which the government had set up before the war, after the war. And I left out of there going into service. Got out of service and went to the United Engineering School in Louisville, Kentucky. Finished there and came back and went in business for myself.
And how is it that you came to Kernersville?
Well, I came to Kernersville when I was a kid from Walkertown. We would thumb a bicycle, or either ride bicycles or thumb to Kernersville. And we'd go to the movie. At that time, you go to the movie, you didn't have but a quarter, 25 cents. You go in the movie, and the popcorn was 5 cents. And then you go down to Spiro's, and you had 20 cents left, and you bought, well, you got a drink. It was 5 cents at the theater, and the popcorn was 5 cents, so we had 15 cents left.
And what was Spiro's?
Spiro's was a restaurant where on the right side of North Main Street, on the first block. He was there for years and years. And
What's in that location now?
Bill's restaurant was,
Okay.
Bill bought Spiro's out. And Bill was there until he retired, and I don't know what's in there now. But then you go down to Spiro's, and the hot dog was 5 cents, and the drink was 5 cents. So you spent 25 cents, and you had a night on the town.
So you came to Kernersville often as a child, but you didn't move here.
No, I didn't move here until after, till I got married,
Okay,
and that was in '42.
okay. So you've lived here in Kernersville since 1942?
Yes.
Okay.
Outside of the 3 years in school in Louisville.
Okay. So I am sure that there are lots of things that you can tell us about growing up in Kernersville, which I'd like to come back and get more of that information. For this interview, I'd like to focus a little bit on your knowledge of the mills that were in Kernersville. So.
Well, we've talked about the Southern Silk Mill. Southern Silk Mill was a growing mill. They made silk here, and the silk came in on these quills, and it was a ball of silk about 8 inches big at the bottom and tapered at the top. And this was put on a machine, and then the loom pulled it off of this quill and made the cloth out of it. You had more than one of these on a machine, you see. But these quills were, this was Southern Silk Mill. Now, Southern Silk Mill operated until after the war, or before the war, because at that time, ladies couldn't get silk hose. And the reason for it was the silk mills was converted to rayon, and the rayon was used for parachutes. and they never went back to silk. Silk kind of faded away during the war because it was not a practical garment, not a practical piece of material, because it was so expensive.
And did you work in the silk mill?
No, I didn't, but I had 3 brothers that worked there. 2 brothers were fixers. They worked on the looms. They were on different shifts. And I had one brother that made supervisor. And when he became supervisor, the salary went from it was a straight salary then, and it was $100 a month. And he was wondering what he's going to do with all that money, $100 a month. Nobody ever heard of that, you know. 40 hours a week, and most people was making $20 for the 40 hours, and he was making 100. So the first thing he did was he bought a 1935 Ford 4-door sedan, and it from Ned Stewart, the Ford dealer here, and it was loaded, everything on it but a spotlight. A car really loaded with everything on it, from the fact it would have a trunk, a radio, and a heater. So it had a trunk, radio, and a heater, but it didn't have a spotlight on it. But if a spotlight was added extra, you could get it on the car. So he was proud of that car. We were proud of him to have a new car, you know, bought a new. And I think it's $550 he gave for it.
It was hard to believe.
Yeah.
So you said that he worked 40 hours a week. Was that the regular work?
That's the regular hours.
Okay.
They worked 3 shifts.
Okay. So the mill was running 24 hours a day?
Yeah, it ran 24 hours a day. It was located where Prime Care is now, and the interstate came through and took off the parking area, part of it, and then they tore it down and widened 66 down by there. But it was where Prime Care is now, and so Prime Care was built after the war.
Now, my understanding, there was really only one silk mill in Kernersville.
One silk mill. Now, they had another plant in Greensboro.
Okay.
I had the little brass tags that I gave to John, and they are visible. I don't know what did I mount them?
Yeah,
I mounted them?
you mounted them for the museum, and they're in the museum.
Okay, good. Well, now they come, and I still have the canvas. It was heavy canvas that the cart was made of, you know.
So tell me the process. You said the silk thread came in already on these quills. So can you tell me the process that would get it from thread to the hose?
Well, a loom has shuttles in it. Now the shuttle has a thread from this one, that goes crossways, vertical, and the other one would go horizontal, which made up the thread. And they were going like this, and the shuttles would sometimes fly out. They were about 18 inches long, and they were hollow, and they pointed at both ends so that they went through the thread. And one of the threads was on top, and on top and bottom, and so that when the shuttle went by there, sometimes they were loose, and they were traveling real high speed. Well, sometimes they would fly out, just come out of the track, and they'd go through a window sometimes. It was kind of dangerous to be there. People got hit by them. But that was a hazardous of work in there, you know. But it was a job. And then then it had a take-up reel that reeled it up, and it had to be square. The ends, you know, skewed at the end so that it didn't run off. But they would have bolts at it, and they would get so many feet on that bolt. The weight of it would actually, it was weight, and when it got so heavy, it would shut down, and you take the bolt off and put a new rim on there, and then it would start a new wind up. But then they sent it to the manufacturer to make whatever you want. But most of it was made out of hose, and a lot of silk was made. A lot of stuff was made by silk, scarves and things like that.
So the silk mill here just wove the silk fabric?
They didn't make any product at all.
Okay.
Now the one in Greensboro, they had, it's the same operation. It's just another branch of this one.
Well, that explains why it was easy to convert to.
Yeah. Oh, they converted overnight almost. Yeah. They could convert. It's according to what came in on the quilt.
Do you know where the silk came from? The silk thread?
No, I don't. A lot of it came from Japan, but I don't know whether they furnished it all or not. But a lot of it came from Japan. You know, spiders make silk, and I don't think you could round up enough spiders to make to finish out the product.
Well, I've read a little about attempts to cultivate that moth in the United States, and it's very time consuming and very labor intensive, and you have to have a lot of mulberry trees
because they fed off that.
Yeah. So it's ingenious that they
Well,
get enough silk.
You know that. Yeah, you wonder how they would produce enough, that moth, to do that.
I think one cocoon produces about a mile of one thread. But that's a lot of.
How would you gather that up?
Well,
you know, you wonder. I'd like to see that, how they did that.
My understanding is they would have like farms where they would breed the larva, and the larva then creates the cocoon. But before it could hatch, then they put the cocoon in hot water to kill the moth inside, and then they unravel the cocoon.
It was a teacher's job because it's so fine.
Yes.
But I wondered how you handle that thread. It was such a millimeter.
Which is why I was curious as to where all the thread came from, but I guess it came from Japan.
A lot of it came from Japan. And the Japanese had the patience to do this. We didn't, not in the United States. We wouldn't have the patience to do that. But the Japanese are people, and the Chinese would do the same thing. That's inherited into their culture.
Now, I understand also that there was a wool mill in Kernersville.
There was a woolen mill.
Okay.
Now the woolens, that was the name of the people. Woolen.
So their last name was Woolen?
Woolen, yeah.
And it was a woolen mill, or not?
They didn't produce wool.
What did they produce?
Cloth.
Cotton?
Cotton. There was there was, I knew those Woolen boys.
Mm-hmm.
They owned it.
And what were the dates, do you think, of that? When was that in
No,
operation?
that was, they operated on up until the late 30s. And then there was Adam Millis.
Okay.
Adam Millis was, they would hire people. I know a man that wanted a job. He had a little farm and he raised tobacco. He'd raised a couple acres of tobacco to supplement his income. He and his wife, they didn't have children. And so on a rainy day when he couldn't work on the farm, he would come to Adam Millis and work free of charge. He'd walk, he didn't have a car. And he would walk from Tallis Crossing, which was about 1.5 miles, to Adam Millis and work free all day long just to learn how to work in the cotton mills. So he learned how to work, and when they needed somebody, they hired him. But he was ready to go to work. And I think they paid, then they paid maybe 25 cents an hour. And maybe a raise would be a penny an hour. They'd raise a penny an hour.
And about what year would that have been?
That was in the 30s.
Okay. Wonder how long he had to work for free before they hired him.
Well, he didn't care. He was willing to do that. But he learned how to operate the looms at Adam Millis. And Adam Millis then burned, you know that story. It was a time when we didn't have water. Our water system was shut down because of the spill, the chemical spill into our water system. You knew that.
Now, where did the chemical spill occur?
Well, up here where the Destructo was the name of it, they had big, huge tanks which would hold thousands of gallons of chemical, and they poured all the chemicals together. The hazardous chemicals, the regular chemicals, whatever, they poured it into those big tanks, and they atomized it, and it would burn. So they burned it. Well, one night in 1976, they opened the valves on all those tanks and ran the water into our lake down here. We only had a 24-acre lake. I was on the board at the time. And we had to shut down Adam Millis because they did a lot of dyeing here. They brought socks and stuff from High Point over here to be dyed. And so we didn't have drinking water. And the water was hauled in here. We called in a specialist to check the water, and it ran that right. See, it was up here where the automobile, where the, I don't know, Brenner's used to own that. At that time, Brenner's owned it. And so that land was filled with dirt where the Destructo was. The property was filled with, it was almost an acre of it that had to be dug out because it landed in there, and it killed all the marine life from there all the way to the lake, and then it killed the fish in the lake, and the fish was floating around dead on top of the lake. The lake was 24 acres when it was built, but it it had washed in on the edges. All the edges had washed in, and I imagine it was about 20 acres of water there. That's supplied. And then we had an old lake down here, and we converted to that, and we shut down all the car washes. You couldn't water your lawn. We shut down Adam Millis until they could run a temporary line in here down the side of the road to run into our water tank, water system, which was down here at 4th of July Park. Brady Mullinax at that time was our water supervisor. And that was all. Then we had a time, I was on the board at that time. I was a mayor pro tem, and I had to shut down the Madam Millis.
Okay.
Now that disturbed me. They were shut down about 4 days. And
How many people worked there at the time, do you think?
probably a couple hundred,
Okay.
200 or 300. They were out of work, yeah. And to be out of work, making 25 or 30 cents an hour, don't sound like much, but it was a living. And that was destructible to them.
So this plant, what did they do? What did they make? The plant that
They didn't make anything. They just had big tanks that they would take. You see, a company would buy a chemical, and there's a byproduct in that chemical, and they would take out what they wanted out of that chemical. And the byproduct was a liquid, which was, in most cases, was poisonous. And they wanted to get rid of it. So these people would come and get it and take it and put it in the big tanks, atomize it and burn it. And they did that for a couple of years. And then they got more than they could use. And so they just opened the valves one night, opened up thousands of gallons, went down the stream, killed all the marine life from up there, from right up here, within, well, they were there, on the west side of Gary Hitachi. And so they just got rid of the material.
Okay, so they were processing.
They were just getting rid of it.
Okay, okay.
But they couldn't burn it as fast as the suppliers were. They were calling them to come and get it.
What was the consequence to them?
They moved to Charlotte. We shut them down. And they moved to Charlotte immediately, because we ran them out of town, really, because they put a hardship on our town.
Right.
We didn't have water, so we had a lot of people that wanted to be independent, wanted Kernersville to be independent, not go to Winston for water. I said, well, then that means if you want to be independent, we got to get a power company and a telephone company to come here. Because if you're going to be independent, you don't want outside power, you don't want outside telephone, and you don't want outside water. And so we were, and the city was under an oath to rebuild, spend about $1 million on a filter plant where the 4th of July Park is. And so we knew that we only had 20 acres of water down here. So in order to grow like we have, we would have to we'd have to have more water than that could supply. And this little lake down here, on Lake Drive, which is down below us, that head's right over here. And now it goes dry in the summertime. But in the wintertime, it fed that lake. And so the people that laid the line hooked it on up here at Linville Road, and it came down here, and then they hooked another one over here on 150 out there, city limits of Winston-Salem. And so we bought water from them, bought water from Winston, until they could get a permanent line in. And what we got a bid on the, we were supposed to get a 24-inch line. No, we were supposed to get a 30-inch line. We had the money to pay for a 30-inch line. We had to borrow money to do it. And it was put off by people like Larry Brown. Larry and Inez Davis was the procrastinators of the whole thing. They fought it hand and tooth and nail to keep us from going somewhere else to get water. Well, we knew if you're going to look 25 years down the road, we had to have water. So that, it was delayed for almost a year. And we were sparingly using water from temporary bases. And so we had, when it's all said and done, we had to drop down to a 24-inch line from a 30, and it cost us more money because of the labor went up on it.
Well, you started this story about the water when you said that's why Adams Millis burned down.
Adam Millis brought in water they put up a temporary pool down here. They put up as a rubber pool, and they had fire trucks to bring water in and dump it in that pool, and it was pumped out of there onto the building. Okay. We didn't have a ladder pumper then. We just had regular fire trucks, and you couldn't get it. And had we had a ladder truck, fire truck, we could have lifted the ladder up and sprayed it onto the top of it and put out, and the building wouldn't have burned down. It would have did some damage, but we'd have caught it in time. But we didn't have the equipment. And then we bought a ladder truck in case it happened again. So, that's important to have the equipment.
What was the consequence to the town with that many people losing their jobs?
Well, they went, I think some of them went to High Point to work at Adam Millis. And some of them just waited until it was restructured and put into operations otherwise. But it didn't take them too long to put it back because it didn't burn totally down, but it started in the middle of the building. And so then we tore down our water tanks at that time. After that, when we hooked up.
Okay. Now to get back to the mills, so I guess there were just silk and cotton mills. One
That's
silk
right,
and the rest were
Well,
cotton.
we had hosiery here. See, there was 2 hosiery plants here. They made, one of them, Crawford made equipment for the hosiery business, H.E. Crawford. And he made weaving equipment to weave socks. And so Burlington started making socks here. And there was some small companies that made socks.
So when you say hosiery, that really means socks, not stockings.
Not stockings.
Okay, okay. But there were other mills that made fabric.
Fabric only, yeah.
Okay, and what was the end use for that fabric?
Well, it was shipped all over. In the South, when the textile industry was
Okay.
growing in the South, it was shipped locally in the South.
Okay, so when that cotton was woven, was it also then printed and finished, or was it?
No.
It went out as
No.
gray goods.
It went out as the color of the thread.
Okay, okay.
But they, Adam Millis did some dyeing of socks here. They made socks too.
So there was never a mill that made blankets. Okay. Let's take a
Okay.
break.
During the war,
Uh-huh.
because everybody, Chatham had a big contract. He made, Chatham and Winston made woolen blankets for the Army.
Well, we need to do a little research on what we were, and I'm looking at you,
Yeah.
because the committee, we've been operating thinking there was a woolen mill, not that there was a person named Woolen, so.
As far as I know, there's no woolen factory here.
Oh my gosh. So much for our stories, but the wool story was not coming together.
Yes.
We,
Yeah.
we were gonna do in the museum, for cotton, it was from seed to sock was the story. So we're gonna have cotton seeds and plants, and then how it got to be, woven into a sock. And for silk, we had from moth to cloth. And from wool, well, we couldn't quite get it.
From
We
sheep
worked up.
to blankets.
Well, we were trying to make it sound right. So at one point we had from sheep to shawl, but the shawl part wasn't working. So we were operating with from you
Yeah.
to you.
Well, there was more wool used during the war because we all had woolen clothes.
Yeah,
We had to have woolen clothes in Germany,
yeah.
as cold as it was. We had 2 pair of pants, we had 2 of everything on.
Okay. Had them. Okay.
We didn't take a bath but about every 6 or 8 weeks, maybe longer. And it'd take you 30 minutes to get your clothes off and 30 minutes to put them back.
So, okay, I just needed to collect my thoughts here that, wait a minute, that we don't have a wool story, which makes things a little easier. I'm wondering if so are there some family members still around?
No, I don't think there's any
Okay.
members here now.
Okay. Well, we'll do some research. We got 4 people that their whole background is history and research. So we're
Well,
gonna let
maybe
them-
I'm wrong.
Well, you were here, so.
Well, I knew the woolen guys.
Uh-huh.
My
And
brothers
I guess there
were
is a
friends.
possibility that some of those mills is it possible that some of the mills
Yeah,
that even did cotton switched to
that's right.
wool during the war?
Yeah.
Well, we need to find, we can't just say that, we need to know. And if we don't know, we can't, well, we can't
Well,
speculate.
don't take that woolen that I said to the bank. because
Well,
I-
I'm gonna take it halfway to the bank. We're
Okay.
we're gonna do some more research on it. Okay. So I'm sitting here.
there was a, people that made the equipment to weave a sock. You know, it was a complicated thing, and then they kept improving on that, so it'd go faster and so make a better sock and without make it faster and better. And Crawford moved out of, they were in that building across from the Kerner's Folly, where there's apartments now. They were in there, and I tried to get the city to buy that for $60,000, and there was 3 acres there, and the city didn't buy it. I couldn't get them to move on it. But that would have been a bargain. I wanted to put the police department and the recreation department down there. They had a big building, a warehouse. That was built for tobacco. And,
It's my understanding, most of the buildings that were mills at one point have been tobacco factories.
well, there was one at Walkertown. This chimney is still standing there at Walkertown. Cruz, right behind the Cruz house at Walkertown.
And that was
That was a tobacco factory.
okay.
But Reynolds bought up all that. They bought all the small factories. There was, they would work 25, 30 people, 50 people maybe. But, and they would make plug tobacco. Some of them would make plug tobacco, some made cigars, some made, there was no mass production of cigarettes made like Reynolds had. They just had they overshadowed everything. And so it was, you know, they could make a cigarette forever if they wanted to. You know, they take the knives off, and they were doing like that. Have you ever been to a cigarette factory? Yeah. Okay.
I remember when Whitaker Park
Oh, yeah.
first opened. And
Well, the old
lots of
factories
tours,
was
yeah.
downtown. I noticed where they'd given the coal factory, which they generated their own electricity with a coal. And I knew a man, my wife's cousin worked there. He was a supervisor over the coal factory.
And that was in Winston?
No, yeah.
Okay.
And now they've given that to Wake Forest, and they have sold part of it and going to make apartments out of it, and industry and restaurants and all that. I guess most of that, and they gave them the Reynolds building. And they get a write-off on it. So.
Well, maybe we should talk a little bit about the tobacco factories here in Kernersville. When were they in operation?
That was in the 20s. They probably made they made pipe tobacco. The cigarette manufacturing was left up to Reynolds, the mass production. They could make 1,000 cigarettes while a factory like this was making 10. Because it was a continuous run, and it came on a roll. You've seen it. It came on a roll of paper, and then it curls over, and it's like that. I knew a guy that threw one. He took the knives off the machine, threw it out the window. A cigarette, and he coiled up down here, and he got fired for it. Coiled up on the ground, and he wanted to go home and cut that. He cut it off, and he was going to go and pick up all those cigarettes and cut them up, but he lost his job. But that the tobacco industry, there were a lot of people bought Golden Grain. Was a brand that came in a little bag, and you rolled your own. 20 packs of 20 papers came with that bag. It would make about 20 cigarettes, and you open the paper. It was a length like that, and about that wide, and you rolled it. You put it in your fingers like that, and made a cup out of it. And so, and you put your tobacco in here, and then you rolled it over and licked it. and then pinched the end to keep it from coming out and lit the end up.
Okay.
But that was, it cost 5 cents a bag. But that was better than paying 10 cents for a pack of cigarettes. There's a difference in it.
And Kernersville grew tobacco. Did it grow enough tobacco to supply
Oh, yeah.
the, okay.
Yeah, well, see, all the tobacco was sold. We didn't have a warehouse here. All the tobacco was sold at the warehouses in Winston. There was 5 or 6 warehouses, big warehouses in Winston. Some of them are still standing. Out where they have there was Glen and Peppers and I don't know how many. But that was a great day for the farmers because they'd worked all summer without money. And you carry a load of tobacco to town and you got money for it. So you bought new clothes, and you bought 100 pounds of pinto beans and 200 or 300 pounds of sugar and a case of salmon and a hoop of cheese, and you just bought that to eat on. And you ate on it all winter until the spring come back.
Now, in going back to the mills, there wasn't enough cotton grown.
There wasn't any cotton grown around here
Okay.
because cotton was grown in South Carolina, primarily in South Carolina. There's none grown in Virginia either. It was grown where they had equipment, where they had gins, and they had equipment and the people. A lot of people worked in the cotton fields, you know. They charged by the bag. They'd give them a bag, empty bag, and they'd pick 100 pounds of cotton, and I think they got about $1 for it. And it would take them about all day.
So when the cotton came into the mills here in Kernersville, it was already thread.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
every bit of it.
Okay.
We didn't, see, you gotta have the gin, which takes the cotton from the fields, and he has them on these big trucks, and it's dumped in the gin, and then it's run through and separated, get the husk off of it, the shells off of it, all that's cleaned up, and it's baled there. It's sent to a factory then to make thread out of it in a bale. The bale would be maybe that long with straps around it. So they baled it like wheat straw, and sent it to a mill and then the mill made thread out of it, and the thread then went from there to the weaver. I was traveling and I had equipment I called on a lot of textile factories. It was cleaner than you'd think. They had automatic vacuums to run up and down on tracks to suck up all the dust, and it traversed, and it would turn and go back all the time under each loom.
And where was this?
In South Carolina. And Fayetteville. Fayetteville had a lot of cotton raised down east. No cotton is raised, I don't think there's any raised in Guilford County either. It's all south of that, east of that.
So the Kernersville mills got thread.
That's
And
all
wove
that's
cloth.
all they got.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they wove cloth, or there were other mills that wove socks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other products that came out of the mills here in Kernersville? You know.
Well, I don't think they made towels or anything like that.
Okay.
they had big factories making it. In Virginia, they had a lot of towel factories. And sheets, bed sheets. Bed sheets and towels was made mostly in Virginia. Of course, I don't know whether it was made out west or not. Most of those people out west, they were industrial states that made other equipment for farming. We didn't have a John Deere here or anything like that, a Farmall or anything like that. But it moved east for a while. Moved out of the west because of the weather out there. Northeast, northwest.
Okay. Well, you've given us a lot of information about mills and some new information for us to think about. I'd like to come back, well, we can cover this.